Maybe somebody's working. Why can't I see it? Oh, there I am. All right, I think I'm live. Hi.
Hi.
Let me do this thing on my phone, and then we'll start.
Are you taping this for future looking at it?
I am taping this for people watching live, and for anybody who wants to watch it later. Share.
And how does one do that?
You go on whatever that person was on. The diocese Facebook. They're all posted there. Post. Yep. If you're on Facebook.
No, I'm not.
Ah,
Consider that
it's the devil.
column.
It is the gossip column. That's very true. Although so is the news. Okay, I guess we can start. Close that. Okay, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, now and forever. Hi. Any new people today? What's your name again? Yeah, you're not. I know you. Should I make you introduce yourself? What's your name?
I'm sorry.
Very good. What's your name?
Tammy.
Tammy. Noah. I don't know anybody's name. I don't know why I'm asking yours. Okay. All right. Welcome to everybody. Welcome to online people. Whatever. Ecclesiastes book 3. I got this bottle of water. Smart water. It doesn't help. As much as I try. Never works. I actually just found the empty bottle in my car and filled it up.
It fits this class.
It's what?
It fits this whole book.
Yes, that's correct. So Ecclesiastes, we started 3 sessions ago. Words of Koheleth, son of David, is the way that the book starts. It is a book written by somebody presenting themselves as prominent. It is a sad, depressing book. In fact, I even saw like tweets unrelated to this. It was just on Twitter, and people were just tweeting about, oh yeah, let's just read Ecclesiastes so we can get depression. So it's not just me that was in the mood to do that. So it does have a sort of existentialist or sort of sad tone to it. It sort of talks about the difficulties and the vanity of life, or the feeling that a lot of things seem pointless, even that everything seems pointless. On the other hand, there are a couple of verses sort of interspersed that give a sort of nicer message, I guess, where he'll say something like, well, there's one thing that's pretty good, which is, to enjoy the fruits of your work, spend time with your family, whatever that might be. He has a kind of medium-sized list of things that he doesn't think that make the sort of activities that don't make a life worth living. Things like just partying all the time, things like just collecting money. These really are pointless activities to him. But there are some things that the author of Koheleth is sort of saying, there are these things, there's a way to live that is wiser than other ways to live. However, how we ended last week, go to chapter 2, if you've got your Bible, of Ecclesiastes, or Koheleth, depending on the translation of the Bible you have. Verse 15. So he said, well, yeah, wisdom is better. Wisdom surpasses folly as light surpasses darkness. The wise man has eyes in his head, and the fool goes in darkness. Yet, verse 15, I too knew that a single fate befalls them all. So even living the wise way of life, you're still going to die. And death is this sort of great equalizer. All right. Now, he does not return and say, And because you're going to die, you might as well just do whatever you want and it's all pointless. No. Even though you're going to die, the truth of what he said before, that living a kind of wise, moderate kind of life, where you work in an honest way and you have honest, decent pleasures, that's still better, even though you die. And I made the point sort of towards the end of last week that it's because we're going to die that we should really be careful with the type of life that we live. It's because it's limited that we have to sort of be smart about things. Now, I want to kind of add to that. And I was talking to somebody, what day is today? Tuesday? I was talking to somebody yesterday. And she was telling me that the way that the brain feels pleasure is that it sort of gets used to a certain level. So, and this is one of the things that can cause addictions to happen, that you can have something like a sort of moderate pleasure. Let's say you're walking outside and it's kind of, there's a nice breeze today. I think the weather was beautiful today, you know. So you're sitting outside, it's a nice day, you're enjoying the breeze, you're looking at the birds, whatever people do outside, and that's pleasant, right? It feels good to do that. But that's not a very intense pleasure. If you get used to higher intense pleasures, what your brain does, like physiologically, is it sets your pleasure sort of sensor way up there. So if you're used to a very intense pleasure, something like sex, okay, I know that comes up once in a while, but you know it's an intense pleasure. So if that's sort of your base for what feels good, you're not going to be able to feel, you'll be less able to feel more moderate pleasures. So more intensity and making that into a lifestyle is really going to make your life less pleasant, because you're sort of going to be chasing a type of fun that's really impossible to maintain. Or it's going to have to get more and more intense. This is what happens with drug users. They'll start with, just one time, and it's just, but then their pleasure sensor is way up here, and they're not going to be able to match it with a conversation with a friend, which really is a fun thing to do, but it's not as intensely fun as, you know, some nice cocaine. I don't know. I would imagine people do it for a reason. I'm sure it's not because they reach enlightenment with it. But you guys see what you guys kind of follow that? Do you guys have you experienced something like that? Don't raise your hand if you've done cocaine. I don't want to know, but does that seem sort of right to you? Does that seem true? Yeah. This is another thing that they've done studies where, I think I did bring this up at some point before. Not just sex, but even sort of pornography-related things. I think even, I don't know, I like video games. I think a lot of people know that about me. But if that's sort of my level, and it's just, why is it pleasant to play something like a video game? I play them, I think they're fine. But why is that one of the many things we should be moderate about? Well, in order to accomplish some gigantic great feat and feel like you accomplished something in a video game, what do you have to do? You have to sit on your ass and move stuff with your buttons for about an hour, and then you accomplish something. And you get the feeling of accomplishment, but you get used to, and so if you get used to accomplishing things that easily, you're going to really set yourself for a lot of disappointment in life. So Koheleth's point, I think, really stands that, especially because our time on earth is limited, we should really sort of coast through and enjoy every moment that we can. Whereas if we have these really intense moments of pleasure, we're not going to be able to feel a lot of pleasure, you know, in comparison to that. Following me? Okay. What else did I want to say before I started this chapter? Okay. I think this next chapter it's definitely the most positive one we've read so far compared to the last two, which is good. I'm not sure. It might be the most positive one in the entire book, because I know the book doesn't stay all super happy. But let's take a look at it. So we're on chapter 3, verse 1. And I'll read this first little, I don't know what to call it, kind of a poem at the beginning, and then I'll make a couple comments. And again, this is my translation of yours. If yours is a little bit different, that's okay. Everything has a season and a time for every matter under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die. a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to rip down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to fling stones and a time to gather stones in, a time to embrace and a time to pull back from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to fling away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. So you obviously there's this very strong symmetry between sort of each verse. In fact, Robert Alter sees a symmetry between each set of two entire lines. He sees them sort of paralleling. I'm not quite sure I see that. I don't really care much about that either way. I kind of want to just go through and see what's this trying to say. Well, one of the things that I think is worth reflecting on, there's a time to be born, time to plant, time to kill, a time to heal. I think the kill thing is referring to the plants. I think those go together. I don't think it's like, well, 6 p.m., better kill some of you guys. I don't think that's what the Bible is telling you to do. I would hope not. Although there is later on a time for war and a time for peace. Okay, so there is an appropriate time for that. Now, what's one thing that I think is really important to sort of notice right away? None of these things is supposed to happen all the time. And that's a bad thing in some ways, because it's not always a time to laugh. And that sucks, because sometimes the laughing has to stop, and then it becomes a time to weep. But it's also not always a time to weep. Do you guys see how this is a little bit more positive than what we've seen before? Before, all is vanity. Everything is pointless. Now, no, there is a time to laugh. It's going to end, and then the time to weep is going to come, but the time to weep is going to end as well. And so the sort of temporariness, there's probably a smarter word for that, but that's the only word I can think of, temporariness of all the things in human life that was so depressing in the last two chapters now has a kind of positive interpretation. Isn't that interesting? That the same thing, the fact that everything in life ends, including life itself. But if life itself ends, that it means all the little sort of elements of life are also temporary. And up until now, what gain is there? The sun comes up and the sun comes back down. And it's the same thing over and over again. What changed between the last chapter and this chapter? Well, it's the same world, right? The world didn't change. Like, it's not like, Koheleth was writing and then suddenly the world became a different thing and then chapter 3 he started. No, it's the same world. What is it that changed? His interpretation, his attitude changed. And so depending on your attitude, the fact that things end can be a bad thing or it can be a good thing. Now, sort of search your soul on this one, because this is a little bit, it's kind of personal for me, because I'm the type of personality that, man, if I'm going to have to move away in a couple of years, I'm not, but there's no particular plan, but priests move around, that's something that priests do. It becomes tempting, if you know you're going to have to leave, to try to not care that much so that it doesn't hurt when you leave, right? But that's not a really good attitude, is it? Because the fact is, if Koheleth is right, we're all going to leave at some point, and we're not coming back from the place we're going to. Does that mean you should never love anybody or care about anybody in your life? Terrible. Obviously not. So Koheleth is sort of saying to somebody who has a personality like mine that, like, oh man, if it's going to end, like, why should I invest in something that's temporary? Koheleth is saying everything is temporary, and that shouldn't stop you from investing your care and your concern and your heart and your work and your effort into it. You seeing that? So it's sad, but there's also kind of wisdom to it. Okay. Now, I'm going to repeat something that has come up already a couple times. He doesn't bring in the afterlife. In fact, he's going to talk about the afterlife in a couple of verses. And he's going to be like, I don't know, maybe there's afterlife. He doesn't really have any particular opinion on it. And I already said that a couple weeks ago. The Old Testament has very, very little to say about what happens after we die. But Koheleth is writing because let's just try to address this question within the context of this life. I think it's worth it. Let's take a look. I'm not saying I obviously believe in afterlife. I'm not saying don't even think about it. I'm saying let's try to grapple with the question, just as human beings living temporarily on this earth, and what sense we can make of it right now. Doesn't that help to know that because everything is temporary, that doesn't mean it's worthless? Okay. So, I don't know what examples I can give. I mean, everything. Let's say, there's the most obvious one is death. You want to just talk about death? Is that too sad for you? Somebody give me a better example than death of something that of the end of something. Yeah, the end of something good.
Well, childhood.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Okay, that's really good. So childhood ends. That's a good example. Childhood ends. I don't know when it ends exactly, whatever age you but like at some point, you sort of realize, oh crap, I'm not a kid anymore, and that's probably a sad realization. You know, I don't know how you would define that. Maybe it's when you start having responsibilities, whatever it is. And so that's a good thing, and it ended. What should you do? How should you feel about it? Well, you can be sad, but you can also be glad that it was there for the time that it was. And wouldn't it be like wouldn't it be even worse if childhood lasted forever? Isn't that worse? I don't know, like Peter Pan, right? Isn't that kind of what that story's about? But like that's kind of a comical story. I don't think anybody, if they understood what that meant, I don't think anybody would really want that. Because childhood doesn't just mean innocence and energy and whatever. It also means ignorance. It also means incompleteness. A child really is an incomplete person. I'm not saying they're not a person. I'm saying you grow and you become fully grown. You know, they're on the way to becoming sort of a more mature, kind of full, complete being. I'm going to get in trouble for saying that somehow. Anyway, I hope nobody misunderstands me on that. Yeah. Let's say
I'm sorry, can we change the temperature? I'm freezing.
No, I'm burning up here. You want my hoodie?
Really?
Yeah? Okay. Nope, freeze. Sorry. We're doing Koheleth today. We're gonna suffer.
That's temporary time.
Okay, yeah, exactly. It's gonna end soon. What about like some really great organization that did a lot of good work, charity? What about you guys ever have a job that you really loved? Has anybody ever had like a great job?
No.
I'm not sure I have. I'm just kidding. I like my job. But here's an example from my life. I worked in Michigan for 2.5 years as a priest at my home parish, St. Joseph's in Troy. Oh, it was a great time. It was beautiful. Like these are like my people, my own relatives, my own parents went to that parish. Could you imagine how like neat that is? You're the priest of your home parish that you grew up in. It was great. And I was there for about 2 years and a little less than 2.5 years. And it was great. And then it ended and I moved out here. You know, to horrible San Diego. Okay? And I was really sad when I moved out here. You can laugh because San Diego's cute and stuff, but like I really was sad when I moved out here. And yet, when I look back at that time, I'm not like, I don't think about it in sadness, I think about it with happiness. It was temporary, but it was nice. So this is the kind of added thing that, one of the things that this sort of opening poem can kind of teach us. The good things are still good, even though they end. Now, what about the bad things? The bad things are not that bad because they end. Yeah.
Is it like everything happens for a reason? Is that what you're saying?
Oh gosh. That's a really interesting phrase. I think about that phrase a lot because people understand it in different ways. Everything happens for a reason. I don't think that's what he's saying.
I don't understand what the issue.
She asked, is he kind of trying to say everything happens for a reason? I don't think that's what he's trying to say. And I'm not even sure that's true in the way that everybody understands it. So, is God in control of everything? Yes. Does every single thing in reality happen for Father Andy? No. If that's what people mean by everything happens for a reason. Yeah, everything does happen for a reason. Sometimes the reason is like I'm stupid and I make dumb mistakes and like I make bad decisions, and that's the reason why things happen. However, no, I do want to say yes, in the sense that God has a plan. Does that make sense? Now, God's plan, in the larger sense, doesn't always mean I'm going to get what I want. So that's where sometimes people will hear God, everything happens for a reason, and maybe I didn't get this house because there's an even better house down there for me. Yeah, maybe, or maybe not. So sorry,
Sorry, I was just saying, like, I don't say that like, I don't take it
I know.
literally.
Yeah, that's okay.
I just say it to make myself feel better, but I was just trying to see what you were saying.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, I know, I get it. No, it was the right thing to bring up because that is the kind of thing that somebody could get looking into this.
I don't like your second comment,
Good.
the one that's where you said all things are bad, it's okay because it's going to end, and that's not necessarily true. As people go down into desolation, it doesn't end. Depression and suicide. So no, I would disagree with Colette, okay?
Now that you can feel free to disagree with anything that I'm saying, or even Colette is saying.
No, I'm just saying.
I will say this.
I can believe what you say in general.
Yeah.
If you're in a bad season and you're dipping, things are not going well.
Yeah.
It will end probably.
Yeah.
But just to say bad will end, I don't necessarily
Well,
think that's true.
This is a sad way to say it, but like that life ended. Now it didn't end the sadness because hell is worse, and hell doesn't end. So that sucks. Now, but again, remember what Koheleth is saying. Koheleth is speaking simply in terms of this life. So even the worst, the most destitute, despairing person in the world, when they die, however they die, in the perspective of this life, that did end. Now, what happens after is not Koheleth's business, or he doesn't really care much about it. But I get what you're saying, but even that does have a sort of endpoint. Now, another thing to think about is, no, okay, you know what? I'm gonna support what you said partially.
Thank you.
I'm gonna double talk here. When you get, there are certain things that doctors can't heal. I know somebody who's going through back pain and he's been to a bunch of doctors and all kinds of different whatever, and he's just there and that's it. And he's pretty much gonna have to live with it. You lose an arm, and there's a kind of pain of losing an arm. As far as with technology right now, you're not going to get that back. So yes, not every single sad thing is going to end. However, and I think this is, I can see this 100% from my own experience, which is exactly middle of the middle aged. I'm 41, almost 42. The worst things in my life that didn't seem like they would ever end, either internally or externally, did, in my case. I'm not saying they always will, but even if they didn't externally end, I figured out how to deal with them. And just like what Koheleth did, he changed his attitude and saw the things in a different way. One thing that is sort of up to you to change is your attitude, even if the external stuff doesn't change. So even if I'm missing an arm, I don't know why I thought of that as an example. Oh, I was just watching Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Yeah. So if you're missing an arm, okay, that's sad and it's a tragic thing that happened, and gosh, I'll never go near a lawnmower again, or whatever it is. You can accept it and be at peace with it, and you can move on with your life. And the pain that you felt of like the trauma and the sadness and the regret and all of the stuff in losing your arm, at least that part of it can end. The internal sadness can end, and you can at least live. And you'll have to sort of work around it. And then maybe, who knows, technology will get better. And then how's technology on like limb replacement?
I don't do limb replacements.
I know, but like you know stuff. You're a smart guy.
It's pretty decent, but it's not always back to normal functioning.
Yeah.
There are some limbs that you can
You can reattach, right?
flex your arm,
Yeah.
your forearm, prosthetic will flex with it.
Oh, prosthetic, interesting, yeah. And you can reattach some parts of the body, right?
It has to be done very quickly.
Yeah, okay.
like a few hours.
Yeah. But we're not at like Luke Skywalker, Bucky level. Yeah, okay, yeah.
There's like if you preempt like the surgery, if you say like, oh, I'm gonna do this beforehand.
Yeah.
You can like leave some nerves there, so you can actually like feel like the bottom of your foot, like it'll send it
On the prosthetic? Whoa. Pretty cool, man.
Like an MIT
All right. Discovery. All right. Okay. So I think I made that point well enough. Let's see. I'm going to come back to this by the end of today, I think. Okay. Okay, I'll come back to this. What? So I'm back on verse 9. What gain is there for him who does in what he toils? What's the point of this? I have seen the business that God has given to the sons of man with which to busy themselves. Everything he has done, aptly in its time, eternity too he has put in their heart, without man's grasping at all what it is God has done from beginning to end. So the author here is expecting us to pay attention to a shift in his language here. He's used this exact sentence before. I've seen the business which God has given to the sons of man with which to busy themselves. The last time he said that, he said, and it is an evil business. So he says, I've seen what God has given to human beings, and it sucks. But here he's changing things. Here he doesn't say it from a human perspective. He continues, everything he has done in its time, aptly. So now it seems like he's making a shift here, not just from the human perspective that everything is pointless, but no, from sort of God's perspective, that kind of what you were saying, actually. I kind of want to take back a little bit of what I said before, that God knows what he's doing. And these temporary things, in his eyes, there's a sort of purpose to them from his perspective, even though it doesn't seem like there is one from our perspective. Okay? And maybe we'll never see that. I'm not just careful, I always just sort of change the subject. If somebody asks me, okay, Father, why did God do this thing? And then they tell me about something that happened to them. The right answer to that is, I don't know. I have no idea. I'm not going to tell you, oh yeah, let me psychically, I don't even know why people do things. You want to know why God does things? It's not my business to know that. It's not my business to know why you do things. I'm a psychic. I'm going to read this guy's mind and why did he wear a camouflage shirt today? And it's oh no, he's gonna go out into the woods, and so I have no idea, much less God. So that God has a plan is one thing, and that we can sort of be content with knowing that fact is one thing. What God's plan is, I have no idea. What God's will is, I know. God's will is for all of us to become saints. I know that. I have no idea what's going to happen in the next election or in the, I don't know if it's going to rain or not tomorrow. Google knows that better than I do. Maybe. I kind of hope it does. All right. Eternity too he has put into their heart, without man's grasping at all what it is God has done from beginning to end. We cannot grasp it at all, even though it's this really interesting thing. God put eternity into our heart. Now this is going to be important because on the next, a few verses later, he's going to compare us to animals, and he's going to say, well, we die just like animals do. Which, physically speaking, is true. And yet he's already established back here on verse 11, he's already established that God has put eternity into our hearts. And in a funny way, that's kind of the problem. Because if we were just animals, going around hunting for food, eating our food, pooping, reproducing, going to sleep, waking up, doing the same thing again the next day, that would be just fine. It's because God put eternity into our hearts that we can notice that sometimes things are pointless. And it's this kind of irony. Because we have an intellect and we're able to sort of notice things in a higher way than animals are, that's what can allow us to become depressed and anxious and stuff like that. Funny? Who would rather be like a parakeet? Would you rather just be a parakeet or like a monkey or I don't know what? No? You can be honest. I'm not going to tell you. Cat? You would rather be a cat? Isn't that funny? Not one person, maybe there's somebody online who would want to be some other animal. Not one person here, at least, is admitting to wanting to be another animal, even though I just explained animals don't suffer the way human beings do. Yeah, but they don't have anxiety.
You don't know that.
I don't think animals have anxiety.
You just think that. You don't know that.
You know what? I'm going to give you that one.
Thank you.
But I'm pretty sure.
Those are in
Uh,
labs and stuff like that. I think they do suffer and they have anxiety.
They can feel physical pain.
Oh yeah, but they also know. They also sense when someone is coming there to do evil to them. So I know.
That's fear.
Well, whatever it isn't good. It's evil.
Do animals fear death? Yes. I was precise when I said anxiety. I think they do fear, and they definitely feel pain. But I don't think animals look up and say, "What is the point of all this?" That's my point, and that's, I think, one of the deepest human sufferings, and that's what they don't have. I'd much rather have back pain or knee pain than existential crisis every day,
I mean, that's a blessing.
because I've done both. I've had back pain and knee pain, and I've had existential crisis. I have a cousin who had kidney stones, and she gave birth. You know, she had a kid, and she's like, "Oh no, the kidney stones were way worse."
No way.
At least in her case. Yeah. Manny,
Sorry, well, first of all, I was going to say,
I don't know why we're talking about this. Yeah, go ahead.
for kidney stones, they're probably giving better pain control when you're giving birth.
Oh, you don't get morphine with the kidney stones. Yeah.
They probably,
Okay.
they're just getting probably less, but I was going to add this to support your point, which is unusual because usually I try to go against you.
Yes. Thank you.
To support your point, to have that kind of existential appreciation, you need to demonstrate a level of intellect. Like, for example, a human being that just focuses on farming, they clearly don't have, no offense to a simple person, but a simple person that just farms all day long and just thinks about farming, and it's not against farmers, it's against like anyone who does just basic work, like you know, pre-historical times, maybe like 10,000 BC. That kind of a person, when they're not writing, they're not probably not philosophizing. The intellect needed to philosophize about your existence correlates with the intellect to be able to write, to produce materials, to produce artwork. Animals don't do that, really. So we can extrapolate. We can tell which humans are existentially thinking about themselves and the universe, and we can tell which humans aren't. And based upon that, we can extrapolate to animals. Animals clearly don't philosophize, they don't write, they don't read, they don't produce artwork, so they don't have that level of intellect.
So as far as we know, you're right. That was kind of where I was gonna go, where I would have gone with it. It's not the same. Yeah, they don't. As far as we know from looking at them, they don't have poetry, and because they don't have poetry, they don't have Sylvia Plath, and stuff that they read just to get themselves depressed. You guys ever do that? You ever read anything or listen to a song just to make yourself sad?
No.
Is it just me?
No, I don't.
I want to see. Raise your hand if you do that. Raise your hand if you're willing to admit that you do that. Okay, good. I'm not the only moron here. Why do we do that? Like, oh, I'm in a good mood. Let me read something sad to make myself sad. Maybe I'm not in a good mood. Maybe I need catharsis. You know what catharsis is? You got to let it out. Cry it out a little bit.
Sometimes you just want to remember those negative feelings.
What is it?
Sometimes you just want to recall those negative feelings.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Is it like scratching a scab or something? What's my rule? You remember my rule? I tell this to my students. Do you remember the Father Andy rule? When you break up with somebody,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, he remembers. When you break up with somebody, you get, for every month that you were dating, you get 1 day of sitting at home alone, listening to Adele and crying. Per month. 1 day per month. So if you're dating for 6 months, you get 6 days of that. After that, get up and move on. I'm not saying get over it, but like you have to get out of bed and stop listening to Adele. Okay. Is that a fair rule? I think it's a fair rule. I think I'm a reasonable man. You agree? Okay. What the hell am I talking about? Okay.
Does that work with marriage too? Recount many years we were married.
Because that's hard, because marriage, let's say you're married for 5 years. That's like 60 days. That's 2 months of sitting there crying. 35 years. How many months is that? 400 and something. That's a lot of Adele.
How about 50 years?
50 years. Honestly, I think the rule still applies. Although, maybe I could ask you this. Maybe after 50 years, you wouldn't even need a single day. It was just, oh yeah, peace out, we're good. There's a kind of arc that like, it gets easier. Okay. Oh, what a dark day this is. Okay. Can we read the Bible, please?
Yes.
Stop talking about Adele. Can't believe you brought that up, Jack.
Sorry.
Okay. I know that there is nothing good in it. In what? in time. Yeah, there's nothing good in it, but to be merry and to partake of good things in his life, just like what we saw last chapter. Okay. And also every man who eats and drinks and enjoys good things in all his toil, this is a gift from God. All right. So this is actually, he really is sort of expanding on what the points he made in the last chapter. In the last chapter, he's saying, he was talking about immoderation, like not just working all the time and not enjoying anything. That's terrible. But just having fun all the time, that's lousy too. There's a sort of middle ground. Here he's saying that middle ground is a gift from God. That sort of life of that type of enjoyment, God's involved in that, which he didn't say at all in the last chapter. So now God is part of the picture. Interesting, right? A little bit more sophisticated, yeah.
Sorry, isn't this very similar to the Epic of Gilgamesh? Gilgamesh's final conclusion? Because he's trying to seek immortality, and in the end, he's like, you know what, let's just enjoy life while we can,
Yeah.
while living it.
I may have mentioned that last week. I don't remember. Did I? Whatever. Yeah, that's right. All right. I know that whatever God does will be forever. One cannot add to it, and one cannot take away from it. Look what happens when you add God to the picture. Before it was, go to the very beginning of the book. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What gain is there for man in all his toil that he toils under the sun? A generation comes and goes, but the earth endures forever. The sun rises and the sun sets. All rivers go to the sea. All things are weary. Just looking at the world, it's terrible. Put God into the picture, exactly the same picture. It's not everything is pointless and nothing you do makes any difference. No, well, you can't add to what God does. Now, how does that change the picture? Well, it's kind of a little bit, but at the very least, there's somebody there who's dealing with this. It's not really your job to add to this, is kind of the way to think about it. Okay. Which I like. I mean, again, this sort of depends on your personality. Like, if you're the type of person that takes responsibility for everything, everything's your fault. No, I mean, the stuff that's your fault is your fault. The stuff that you're responsible for is what you're responsible for. And you are responsible for maybe more than you'd like to be. It's not just your own individual life, but you do have to take care of the people around you. Maybe even you have some responsibility for the world and the community that you live in. Great. But, it's not all on your shoulders. You ever feel like that? I feel like that a lot. So you cannot add to it and you cannot take away from it. I remember going into a priest meeting one time. It was one of my first ones when I moved here. And I was upset about something. I don't know what it was. And I walked in and I had like a annoyed look on my face or upset look on my face. And I'm sitting there. And then this other priest in the diocese is like, Father Andy. I'm like, yeah, what's up? He's like, what's 500 plus 500? I said, 1,000. He's like, yeah, see? What are you worried about? Maybe it sounded better in Chaldean, I don't know. But that's kind of what one cannot add to it and one cannot take away from it. Reality is what it is. I think that was his point. Reality is what it is. The world is what it is, whether you worry about it or not. Whether you sort of take the whole thing on your shoulders. Nobody liked my joke. And God has so acted that they should fear him, that which was already has been, and that which is, and what is to be already has been. And God seeks out the pursued. The language gets a little weird here. Further did I see under the sun the place of judgment, wickedness there, and the place of justice, the wicked there. And I said in my heart, the just man and the wicked God will judge. You guys see, I think he's sort of going from nothing makes sense, everybody dies, it's all the same, to gradually, no, things are starting to get distinguished. Wisdom is better than folly. Here, justice is better than injustice. And God will judge and condemn the wicked. For there's a time for every matter, and every deed he assesses. You see how that same phrase, there is a time, whereas before it was like, oh yeah, everything, happiness, lasts only a certain time, and sadness only lasts a certain time. Here, when he's addressing it to evildoers, and he says there is a time, it means you're not always going to get away with it. And so you see how it has a kind of a different cut to it now when it's addressed to a different kind of person. I said in my heart in regard to the sons of man, God has sifted them out to show them they are but beasts. All right, let's get sad again. For the fate of the sons of man and the fate of beasts is a single fate. As one dies, so does the other. He's really good at bracketing. He's really good at only talking about one aspect of things. And all have a single spirit. Ooh, that doesn't sound good. And man's advantage over the beast is nothing. For everything is mere breath. Everything is vanity. Everything goes to a single place. Everything was from the dust, and everything goes back to the dust. Whoa! Quote that out of context. Or you could just literally read the next verse. Who knows whether man's spirit goes upward? All right, so he's not 100% sure about this. Who knows whether a man's spirit goes upward and the beast's spirit goes down into the earth? And I saw that nothing is better than that man should rejoice in his works, for that is his share, for who can bring him to see what will be after him? So this is really interesting. Whether or not there's an afterlife, we should sort of live in this way. Again, all these things that he was saying last week. Don't overdo it. Don't just compile a bunch of money. Enjoy what you have. Don't just like, he was even sort of criticizing like saving everything, not even like, eating well so that your kids can, just enjoy your life a little bit. I mean, leave them something, but you can go on vacation. Mom and Dad, you can go on vacation. That's okay. You know what I mean? Go back to the beginning of chapter 3. And I saw that nothing is better than that man should rejoice in his works, for that is his share, for who can bring to him to see what will be after him. Go back to the beginning. Everything has a season and a time for every matter under the heavens. So he's saying the best thing is that we should rejoice in our works, in the stuff that we do. So here's I want to work through this again. Maybe all of these things, a time to do this and that, if we could, maybe the trick is to learn to enjoy in whatever way possible, whatever it is in front of us. Rather than what I do sometimes and what some people do, which is I'm going to allow myself to be happy once this is done. Do you guys do that? You know what happens when you do that? Can anybody guess what happens when you do that? You're never ever happy. I was doing that in 2017. I said, all right, Father Andy, you have my permission to be happy when you're done with the doctorate that you just started. 2 years later, I finished. Nope, I wasn't allowed because now you have to publish it. It is now 2 years later. I signed the contract a couple days ago. But I'm not allowed to be happy until the thing's actually in print, which will probably be another year. But don't worry, by then I'll find something else to cause me to be unhappy, to delay my happiness. Do not do what I do. Do what Koheleth is what I think he's suggesting. A time to be born. Well, that's an easy one to rejoice in, right? Everybody likes babies, except me. I don't like babies. They're very weird things. They're weird things. Aren't they? No? You don't agree with me?
Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay,
I like them when they're toddlers.
Yeah, toddlers are much more interesting. They can like run around and talk and kind of, but like little tiny babies, you know what I'm talking about? They're horrifying.
They're a lot of work.
They're a lot of work, which I wouldn't.
They're very controlling.
They're controlling? The babies are controlling?
Oh my God, are
Oh.
you kidding?
Who else has had kids?
Lucas, no.
You get up in the middle
Who has
of
had
the
them before?
night and-
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they weren't born 20 years old. Okay.
I'm not even-
David has kids. Who has kids here? I'm curious. You've got some kids. Okay. All right. So a time to be born, you can rejoice in that. A time to die, that's a little harder to rejoice in. Isn't it possible, or is that impossible? I mean, it's certainly a bad idea. Like, I'm so happy that somebody died. So I think the joy that he's talking about is a kind of a deeper, sort of, at the very least, a kind of peacefulness. doesn't. I have witnessed. I've probably been to more funerals than anybody in here. More than any of the younger priests, probably as much as some priests older than me, because I was at very, very big parishes for most of my priesthood. I've been to tons of funerals, and very, very often, not all the time. Sometimes it's just absolutely devastating, especially if it's some terrible accident or they died young. No, then it's just absolute devastation, and you just sort of pray for them and wait for that time to be over. But sometimes, and certainly more often than not, it's sad, and they miss the person, and then the casket and the liturgy, and they cry and stuff like that. But then you talk to them afterwards. This just happened a couple of weeks ago with a good friend of mine. I said, "So how are you doing?" And he said, "No, it's actually really peaceful right now," because we were watching him just like suffer and just die day after day, and it was just dragging on. And we didn't want this to happen now. We actually were hoping for another couple of years with him, but now that it happened a lot more quickly, it's sort of peaceful, knowing that he's like not suffering in that way anymore. You see what I mean? Now, is that joyfulness? Not exactly, but there's something to it that's like silver lining, I guess. Okay, like I said, there are cases when that's the farthest thing from the truth, but in many cases, that's what happens. Okay. A time to plant. Is it fun to plant? Anybody garden? Is planting things fun? What's fun about it? It's hopeful. You're like, oh, I can't wait for this thing to grow. Is it fun to plant? I'm not really a gardener.
Really?
I don't go outside under any circumstances.
You don't like flowers?
I hate flowers. I hate flowers and babies. You guys are learning a lot about me today. No, I did plant. We planted a couple trees at the seminary about 6 months ago or so, maybe more, maybe a year ago almost. And that was pretty fun. And now I'm actually eating some of the fruit from those trees. Pat myself on the back. All right. So it's a time to plant. That can be fun. A time to uproot what is planted. Can that be fun?
Yes.
Sure, it can. You ever take an axe to a tree?
Oh, God.
That's a very relieving thing.
Really?
Yeah, you hit the thing and you feel better. You shouldn't do it to a good tree, but let's say the tree has to come down for whatever reason. You know, it's got gangrene. I don't know why we cut down a tree. No, what we were doing at the seminary is we had a bunch of stumps from trees that had already been cut down. Or if it's like a eucalyptus trees are like, they wreak havoc on the ecology of Southern California. They're not from here. So you want to cut one of those down, you have my permission. Okay? So, but we had these big stumps, and so that was like shoulder day. I was just like hacking at that thing. I went nowhere. The thing was way too but it was sort of fun to do that. No? Is that just me? Me and who's that guy? Randy Barno. The guy who owns the gym and he does the sledgehammer stuff. You guys don't know anybody. Okay, whatever. A time to kill and a time to heal. I don't know if I can do it for this one. Healing, I'm sure healing is joyful. How can killing be joyful?
Putting down an animal?
I don't think that's, well, for the same reason that when a human being, when they're suffering. Yeah. I do think this is about planting. I think it's related to the plants.
What about fishing?
Fishing? Oh, there you go. Hunting?
Yeah.
Okay, I got to eat this thing now. There's something joyful about eating. I'm sorry to vegans out there. A time to healing. So you guys see the way that they're paired up. One is easier than the other, but even the sort of harder one to find joy in, there's something there that sort of you can at least get something out of. A time to rip down and a time to build. I think both of these can be joyful. You know, flippers, dudes that just buy an old house and they just rip the guts out and rebuild it and sell the house for more money. I was helping one of my uncles. He bought an old house and he was doing it. It was to live in himself, and I was helping him do deconstruction work. It was a blast. It's a lot of fun to do deconstruction work. Anybody ever do that? You get to use sledgehammers and just. Okay.
That could go along with the killing and the healing too.
Yeah.
You're destroying,
Yeah.
and then when you're done,
Yeah.
it's that healing, that
Yeah.
joy that comes out.
Yeah. I don't want to tell you that the act of destruction is fun. It is, but that's not the part that I want to stress. It's what's joyful about the act of destruction is that in place of this kind of rotting, water-damaged wall, you can put something clean and beautiful. And there's something joyful about that. You know what one of my favorite things to do is? The seminarians know this about me. One of my favorite things to do is when there's a bunch of food platters out and like everyone's finished eating, and then there's like a bunch of like empty spots in the platters. I love combining them all into like one platter. I think that's so fun. Is that just me? It's literally just me.
And then do you eat it?
No, I just put it in the fridge, and like it fits so nicely in the fridge. It's just very satisfying. I hate you all. You guys are all making me feel awkward.
Should do fridge reviews.
No, my husband does that. You're not allowed.
Thank you. You left me hanging for about 5 minutes, but you came in on the end. Okay. A time to rip down and a time to build. Legos are fun. A time to weep and a time to laugh. How can weeping be joyful?
You can
It's a relief. Exactly. You let it out. Yeah. A time to mourn and a time to dance. I just talked about the mourning. Dancing, I cannot imagine how that would be fun. I hate it. I hate what babies, flowers, and dancing. And I'm not joking. You guys think I'm joking. I'm not. I hate those things. A time to fling stones and a time to gather stones in. I don't know what the hell what that's about. Why you would throw? Maybe this has something to do with farm life, or maybe you're throwing stones at a bird to try to. Oh, maybe you're trying to hunt birds and you're throwing stones at birds. Maybe that's what's going on. I don't know.
How about casting? Like maybe casting out, you're throwing away.
Yeah, maybe. And there's time to gather stones in.
Yeah.
Okay. A time to embrace.
Says gather stones.
Yeah.
Maybe if you're trying to plant a field of food, you wouldn't want to get rid of all the stones. You know, scatter
That's the gathering in, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. A time to embrace and a time to pull back from embracing. So hugging. Is hugging fun? I have no idea.
Not allowed to.
A time to pull back from embracing. That's fun. No. A time to you know how cats are? You know, I got a cat. And cats once in a while they'll just be in this mood, they want to like cuddle or whatever. They'll come and they'll cuddle and it's cute. And then just randomly they're just done with you. And if you try to pet them, they'll destroy like you have to get like a Winter Soldier arm. Okay. A time to seek and a time to lose. Is seeking fun? What will be joyful about seeking? What's a thing that you would seek that would be fun to seek?
Taco Bell.
Taco Bell? Smells?
Spouse.
Spouse. Ooh, dating. Is dating fun? I have no idea about that one. It seems like a nightmare to me. You know what I do seek? Like if I want to like buy some thing on Amazon, I do like to research the products and like figure out what was going to work best for me. That is kind of fun. A time to lose. How could losing be fun? This one I get immediately. Who can tell me why would losing something be fun? Yeah.
Like you can have like the opportunity for a comeback.
Okay, lose. So you're thinking of losing like I lost this thing. I lost this competition or something. But look at in reference when it's opposite to seek. So you're gaining something, but then you're losing a thing. Why would it be pleasant to lose some object? Yeah.
You don't have to worry about like responsibilities for it anymore.
Well, yeah. Because I used to have to move at least once a year, if not twice a year when I was in the seminary. And even as a priest, I've had to move around at least every couple of years. It's such a freeing exercise to give away stuff you don't need. Clothing, books, like whatever other stuff you have. If you don't need it, like you literally haven't worn a shirt for 5 years and you probably are never going to wear it and it doesn't really mean anything to you and it's not like this heirloom or whatever, get rid of that stuff. It really feels good. It's very like, oh, you feel lighter. Some of you are looking at me like I'm crazy, but try it. It really is. It's worth doing. A time to keep and a time to fling away. There you go. That's another. I think it's kind of repetitive there. A time to tear and a time to sow. That's similar to the building thing, building and breaking. A time to keep silent and a time to speak. So everyone go home. Okay, this is gonna be mean. Sit your parents down, if they happen to be talkative, like some people's parents are, and say, "Mom, listen. The Bible says there's a time to keep silent." "Dad, listen. I don't want to just pick on moms. You don't have to talk all the time. It's this weird thing. The Bible says you can be quiet sometimes, but there is a time to speak." Morally speaking, this is kind of a wide thing. Like there are times when like people come to me like they ask advice, like, oh, there's this guy I know and he's doing something, and I'm not, and they'll ask me like, what should I do? Should I go and talk to that person, or should I just kind of let it go? And it depends on the situation. There's a time to keep silent and a time to speak, even in everyday sort of life, and what's the right thing to do. A time to love and a time to hate. But aren't we supposed to not hate, Father Andy? Yeah, I don't think he's talking about like hating a human being in their humanity. But there are things that you can hate. There are things that it's the time to hate them. If there's some injustice happening, something that's wrong that's happening, it's appropriate to hate that thing. I wouldn't lose sleep over it, but the correct emotional response towards certain things in life is hate.
You can hate the evil, but not the person.
Yeah, you can hate even the sin of the person. I'm saying even like in the world, sort of built into the world. I hate HOAs. I was helping somebody like find a place to stay recently, and I was just, oh yeah, what about this? This rent is really low. No, but the HOA is $400 a month. And what the hell's a HOA? Oh, it's this thing, and they like, what do? Well, they yell at you if you don't mow your lawn. You're paying them $400 a month to yell at you when you don't mow your lawn. I'm sure they do other things that are also annoying, but I hate them. I've learned as much as I could about them, and I hate them. I'm sorry. A time for war and a time for peace. This is ironic because, again, I can pull up, the last, 10 U.S. presidents, maybe not all of them, but the majority of them, sit them down and say, oh, guys, look, sometimes you cannot be going to war. We don't always have to be in other countries doing stuff that's going to, for a couple of decades and then leave and it's worse than when we got there. It's this weird thing. Look, there's a time for peace sometimes. Frickin' Bush. And all the rest, it's not just him, whatever. All right, good. Perfect timing. So next week we'll do chapter 4. We're on as usual. Any questions or comments or other things you want to ask me about or not unrelated to Koheleth, current events? You want to ask about my cat? Is it about my cat? Okay.
How long it took that writer to finish this book?
Oh, I have no idea. We don't even know when he wrote it. Koheleth?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't even know what year he lived in.
Well, why did he write it like so many different attitudes? Like one thing.
I think he did. So, yeah, his change of attitude, I think, is on purpose. I think he's doing what's called dialectic. He's kind of having a conversation with himself. And in showing all these different attitudes, he's going to... I already am sensing that there's a kind of progression of the thought. So it's kind of like when you're having a conversation with somebody and neither of you really knows the answer, you kind of lead each other towards the answer. No, it's not this, it's not this. Well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. I think that's what he's doing.
I've heard that like Proverbs, this book, and then Song of Solomon are kind of like a trilogy. They fit together in some various way.
Okay. I have no idea.
Yeah, okay.
This, Proverbs, and Song of Songs. I don't know anything about Song of Songs. I know it's... Keith said that? He knows more than I do about this
It's a
stuff.
love story.
Yeah, I know what it's about. I don't know what it's about. Like theologically.
It sounds very romantic.
Yeah, it's weird.
really.
No, yeah, Keith knows that stuff better than I
He
do.
was talking about how it's the three of them reflect the interior life. Like,
All right.
I don't know what it was, but
I'll give him that.
How do you feel about New York and California now becoming states to welcome the vacation of people coming just for abortion as a vacation?
I'm opposed.
Because that's what's happening in New York.
Yeah.
And they're being invited to come there to do that as their...
Oh, the Texas thing?
Yes.
Yep.
But New York is inviting.
Nobody asked me.
And the governor-
They never asked me anything.
And the governor, quote unquote, is Catholic. So it's just, you ask her and again, I'm just asking you, this state is gonna be the same.
Nobody asked me. Yep.
Sorry, I'm here.
Yes.
Do you assign readings from that book? Or what-
No. What we usually do is when you get here, I just sort of read. Basically, what happened today, I'll read a couple of verses. If you want to bring a Bible with you, you can read along, but you don't have to read it ahead of time.
Also, it doesn't have to be
Oh no, any Bible you have, even if it's off your phone or whatever. This just happens to be a translation of a guy that I like, and he has little commentaries on it, so it's pretty good. Yes.
When I'm, is this what he's talking about? Is it could it be also correlated to a spiritual relationship as well as to a physical? Like, because he says there's a time to, one of the things that we're hearing, like a time to plant and a time to uproot. Like that time to grow in your spiritual and time to give it out. You know,
Yeah, sure.
there's-
Oh yeah,
is it-
absolutely.
So that's kind of what I'm getting, like a kind of both physical and a spiritual
Oh, yeah.
relationship.
I mean, even the people that have the simplest possible spiritual life, like monks, Benedictine monks, even they don't do the same thing all day long. They have a time to pray, and then they go out in the fields and they work, and then
Right.
they go and read. Yeah, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
A little off topic, but why is C.S. Lewis such a hot in Christianity? Why is he so celebrated?
Why is C.S. Lewis so celebrated? Father Dan, you read more C.S. Lewis than I do.
Nice about today.
It's all right. I like him. I think he's pretty good. I don't know. He's why is he celebrated? He's a good writer. May?
I mean, and in the English-speaking Christian world, Protestantism has dominated more so than Catholicism.
Yeah, sure.
He's also simpler to understand.
Yeah, he is. His books are more accessible, and I think the point about English Protestants or Protestants in the English-speaking world is also right. He's pretty accessible. Some of his works are a little thicker than others, but yeah, I don't mind them. I read a lot of them when I was in college. I haven't read much lately. My favorite book by C.S. Lewis is called "Till We Have Faces," and it has nothing to do with Christianity. It's just a little novel he wrote, and it's just this cute story, and it's just very nicely done. You just read it? Yeah. Yeah. You like it? Yeah. I like that book. I also like The Great Divorce. That's a good book. It's not about divorce. It's about heaven and hell, and purgatory. Whether he likes it or not, it's about purgatory. Even though he's an Anglican and is unclear on that. Yeah. Great Divorce? Yeah, it's good. Yeah. Other random questions? Nobody brought snacks. I wasn't joking about the snacks thing. Not just for me, to share with each other. Is there? Oh, okay. So there's snacks over there. So I actually do want you guys to bring snacks and hang out a little bit afterwards. Nobody's going to kick us out. And if they do, I'll yell at them.
Well, why don't you do they used to do literature analysis of Bible study? What was that?
Yeah, but I got tired of doing that. We used to read books after Bible study.
C.S. Lewis.
We did, yeah. We read Dante. We read, yeah. That was 15 years ago, man. I don't have that kind of energy anymore. I do not have that kind of energy.
At 41, you have no energy.
I got a foot in the grave. Pray for me, please. Okay. Yes.
Is Dante in this book, I mean, is it really true? I mean, I've heard
No.
bishops, they quote,
The Divine Comedy of Dante is a poem that he wrote on purpose to be symbolic of things.
but bishops, they quote, and even,
Because it's a good book. It's a beautiful book. It's one of the best books ever
but
written.
they describe them, sometimes they describe how.
But it's not literal. He didn't mean it as literal. I'm not doing a class on Dante and Emmanuel. Don't start.
Saying, can a bishop quote from the Prince?
I had a bit. The Prince, Machiavelli, have you heard that name? It usually has to do with political control and intrigue and screwing people over to get gain, and it's this all very negative, immoral stuff. As a joke, I did this at least 3 times. I used to give a copy of The Prince to any priest that I knew that was elected to be bishop. Do you guys see how mean of a joke that is? I should stop doing that.
How do they feel about it?
They laughed. They know it's me. They know my sense of humor. Okay, any other questions? All right. Let's pray Hail Mary and then we'll hang out. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour. In the name of the Father and Son. All right. See you next week.